Welcome to the deep dive. We are absolutely thrilled you are joining us today because the source material you've handed over for this session is, frankly, staggering.
Staggering is definitely the right word.
It really is. The sheer scale and the wild creativity of what we're looking at today is just immense. You've brought us excerpts from a text titled The Origin of Humanity, or in the original Chinese, Renlai Qiuan,
Huh.
written by Suifeng.
And let me just say, if you thought you had a firm handle on the history of the universe, you're in for quite the ride today.
Oh, buckle up, because this text doesn't just tweak history, it attempts the ultimate synthesis.
Right. It really is an extraordinary document to map out. I mean, humans have always looked up at the stars and asked where we come from. But this text takes that fundamental question and tries to weave together, well, everything.
Everything. We're talking evolutionary critiques, biblical analysis, global mythology.
Yeah, and a deeply alternative cosmology, all squeezed into one massive, unified framework. It operates as a fascinating case study in modern myth-making. It attempts to reconcile everything, from the construction of the Egyptian pyramids and the extinction of the dinosaurs to the existence of black holes and the Bermuda Triangle.
Which sounds completely chaotic, but there's a distinct logic to it that we are going to explore. But before we jump into that timeline, we need to explicitly state the mission for our deep dive today.
That's a very important point.
Because this text touches on some deeply held scientific, religious, and political beliefs across different cultures, our goal here is strictly exploratory.
Right, we're just looking at the architecture of these ideas.
We are your impartial guides. We're mapping out this highly detailed alternate universe that the author has constructed. We aren't here to endorse these claims as factual truth, nor are we here to mock them.
No, no.
We're just here to explore the author's unique ideological framework and understand how all these incredibly diverse puzzle pieces fit together in their mind. So get comfortable, because we are covering billions of years of history.
And to cover that history, the author starts by aggressively dismantling the established paradigms.
Okay, let's unpack this. The text begins by challenging the two most prominent narratives of human origin, Darwinian evolution and the biblical account in Genesis. Let's start with the critique of Darwin.
The author argues that evolution simply lacks the transitional fossils required to prove a slow, gradual change from one species to another.
And to drive this home, the text uses a rather unforgettable analogy.
It really is.
It suggests that pointing to a few scattered, broken fossils, like Australopithecus, and declaring them the direct ancestors of modern humans, is essentially like finding a few scattered chicken bones in the dirt and confidently claiming they must be the evolutionary ancestors of swans.
That analogy perfectly captures the author's deep skepticism toward the gradualism of evolutionary theory. But the text pushes past analogies. It points to specific scientific phenomena to build its case.
Like the Cambrian explosion.
Exactly. The Cambrian explosion, which occurred roughly 530 million years ago. The author frames this event, where a massive variety of complex animal life appears relatively suddenly in the fossil record, as definitive proof that life didn't slowly evolve.
Right, they argue it appeared instantaneously through design.
Yes, and what's fascinating here is the level of highly specific mathematical detail the author uses to question the concept of random mutation, particularly regarding animal instincts.
Wait, this is the part about the bees, right? The author is using the physical geometry of a beehive to disprove Darwin.
They are.
How does that leap in logic actually work?
Well, the text focuses on the bottom angles of a honeycomb. It notes they are exactly 109 degrees 28 minutes and 70 degrees 32 minutes.
Which is incredibly specific.
Right. Let's pause and think about that structurally. In engineering and calculus, those specific angles are known to use the absolute minimum amount of wax to store the maximum amount of honey.
So it's the most efficient shape possible.
It is the most economically and structurally rational design possible in physical space. So the author's point is this: how does blind trial and error mutation stumble onto perfect calculus?
They don't think it's possible.
No. And they list other phenomena too, like the precise navigation systems of bird migrations, the exact, predictable timing of a chick breaking its shell, or the complex electrical generation of an eel.
The argument being that these aren't evolved adaptive traits.
Right. They're evidence of deliberate, highly intelligent engineering from the very beginning.
So the author completely rejects the idea of biological accidents. And once the text feels it has dismantled evolution, it pivots straight to the Bible.
This is where the theological critique comes in.
We all know the basic plot of Genesis, but the text zeroes in on the aftermath of Cain killing Abel. Cain is cursed to wander the earth, and he expresses a very specific fear to God. He says, "Whoever finds me will kill me."
Which brings us to a crucial logical deduction within the text.
Right.
If we follow the strict timeline of Genesis up to that moment, it's just Adam, Eve, and Cain left.
Abel is dead.
Exactly. So the author asks the obvious question. Who exactly is Cain afraid of? Who is this whoever?
Because if they are the only family on earth, there is literally no one else out there to find him in the wilderness.
The source concludes that this glaring inconsistency proves a massive point within its ideological framework. The Bible is not documenting the origins of the entirety of humanity.
It's just regional.
Yes, it is merely documenting the localized origins of Middle Eastern peoples. And if the Bible only explains one regional population and Darwinian evolution is off the table, the author necessitates a much larger cosmic explanation for where the rest of us came from.
Which opens the door to the author's alternative cosmic hierarchy. Because if you're going to rewrite the origins of humanity, you have to start at the very top of the universe.
You have to build a new system from scratch.
Exactly. The text introduces a universal blueprint, starting with the supreme god, referred to as Taiji. This supreme god is described as the nerve center, the total energy core of the entire universe.
But managing an expanding infinite universe is an impossible job for one entity.
Right. Just like a massive corporation needs regional managers, the supreme god needs helpers to run the cosmos.
And the author's blend of ancient theology and modern astrophysics becomes truly unique at this stage. The text explains that the supreme god created these helpers by compressing immense, localized pockets of energy until they formed a specialized structure.
A structure with its own independent consciousness.
Yes. These consciousnesses are referred to as lesser gods. And what the author does next is map these spiritual entities onto physical reality.
This is the part that blew my mind when you brought it to me.
According to the text, these lesser gods, these massive conscious energy managers, are actually the black holes scattered throughout our universe.
Hold on. Black holes are literal gods managing sectors of space.
That's the claim.
That is a wildly creative way to tie a modern astronomical mystery into ancient spiritual concepts. But it gets even more specific. Our particular universe, which the text claims includes billions of galaxies, is managed by two primary gods, Jesus and Satan.
But you really have to throw out your traditional Western understanding of these figures here.
Totally. In this framework, they aren't just moral absolutes of good and evil. They are perfectly balanced, opposing necessary forces of physics, like yin and yang.
A structural duality.
Exactly. Jesus represents light, truth, the mundane, and softness. Satan represents darkness, falsehood, the extraordinary, and strength.
It's a system built entirely on balance.
Yeah.
But a universe managed solely by two massive opposing forces of physics is cold and mechanical. To fix this, the text introduces the next tier of the cosmic hierarchy.
The angels.
The angels. These beings were created from smaller energy pockets specifically to bring life, vibrancy, and movement to an otherwise lonely universe. However, because Jesus and Satan were perfectly matched in cosmic power, but completely opposite in their philosophies, the angels eventually split.
They had to pick a side.
Right. They split into two distinct factions based on whose energy they aligned with.
And the author actually maps these angelic factions directly onto human religions. The angels who followed Satan became what we know as Buddhas.
Which is such a flip from traditional expectations.
Completely. The text claims they reside in a 36-dimension space called the Western Paradise. And while they project an image of peace, they are actually highly competitive and supreme in their power.
And then there's the other side.
Right. On the flip side, the angels who followed Jesus became the Taoist immortals. These are described as pleasure-seeking, nature-loving, refined beings who just want to cultivate and enjoy a beautiful existence.
So we now have the complete cosmic board set up. The supreme god is the core, the black hole gods are managing the sectors, and the angelic factions, Buddhas and immortals, are ready to bring life to the void.
And this sets the stage for the creation of our home, Earth.
According to the text, the terraforming of Earth began roughly 4.5 billion years ago, directed by Jesus and his faction of Taoist immortals.
They were the architects.
Yes. They calculated the precise orbit, introduced water, and engineered the early plants and animals to create a paradise.
They ran into a major logistical problem, though. If these immortals ever wanted to leave Earth and go back to the higher dimensions, the animals would die.
Because the planet couldn't self-regulate.
Exactly. The planet had no seasons, no weather, and crucially, no tides. They needed a permanent, automated mechanism to sustain the environmental cycles while they were gone.
To solve the problem of tides, the immortals built the moon.
Not just found a rock, but built it.
Right. Not just a rock caught in our gravity. The text claims the moon is a giant, hollow, highly polished metallic sphere, specifically engineered as an environmental regulatory engine for Earth.
I love the specificity here. They didn't just magic a moon into existence. The text details that they built massive industrial smelting plants right here on Earth to process the planetary metal.
Massive ancient factories.
Yes. One of these factories was located near modern-day Cairo, Egypt, and the other was in the lost city of Atlantis, which the author places at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean.
And they had to get all that metal into space.
Right. They used specialized flying ships to transport this refined metal up into orbit to construct the hollow moon piece by piece.
The author weaves so many disparate mysteries together with this one claim, because the text directly addresses those flying ships. It claims that the UFOs people report seeing today are not aliens traveling from deep space.
No.
They are actually those ancient tools and transport ships left behind by the immortals.
Just parked out there.
Exactly. They're stored safely inside the hollow moon, and they are controlled remotely from a submerged temporary palace located deep beneath the Bermuda Triangle.
So you're telling me the UFOs people see today are just the immortals' old forklifts and construction vehicles from when they built the moon?
That is exactly what the text proposes.
It's a masterclass in connecting dots across totally different conspiracies and myths. But while the immortals were busy building the moon and enjoying their lush, terraformed Earth, because the text notes the Sahara was actually a vibrant green paradise at this time, Satan was watching from afar.
He wasn't happy about it.
No, he felt his faction needed to demonstrate their own cosmic power.
So about 200 million years ago, Satan deployed his followers, the Buddhas, to Earth. Their specific mission was to disrupt and destroy the harmonious terrarium created by Jesus' immortals.
They were saboteurs.
Yes. They executed this by designing and unleashing venomous pests like scorpions and snakes. But their ultimate biological weapons were the dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs as biological weapons.
In this framework, dinosaurs were engineered specifically to consume and destroy the original flora and fauna of the planet.
But the supreme god wasn't going to just let his terraformed planet be eaten. The text says that about 130 million years ago, God intervened directly, wiping out the dinosaurs with a targeted cosmic plague to end the war.
A plague, not an asteroid.
Right. However, two highly intelligent dinosaurs managed to escape the plague. They hid deep in an underwater abyss in the East China Sea and went into a state of suspended animation.
Just tuck that fact away for you listening, because the author brings it back in a spectacular way when discussing human lineages later on.
Oh, we are definitely coming back to that. But for now, the Earth is cleared of the dinosaur threat, but it's sitting idle. Which brings us to the actual creation of humanity, which the text places around 1.6 million years ago.
And the process of creating us was incredibly involved.
Here's where it gets really interesting. God designs the ultimate blueprint for humans. But Jesus's immortals have to actually manufacture us in physical reality. And to do that, they need genetic laboratories.
They built these massive manufacturing centers in the most lush, energy-rich area on the planet at the time. According to the source, those laboratories are what we now know as the Egyptian pyramids.
Wait, the pyramids were genetic labs?
Yes. Creating a brand new cosmic being requires trial and error, even for mortals. The text describes a lengthy process where their first attempts resulted in monkeys. They adjusted the genetic code and produced apes. Finally, they perfected the formula and produced the first true humans.
The text actually lays out a specific manufacturing order for this. It claims the first successful humans were Black populations, followed by Native Americans, and then white and North African populations.
And they couldn't just leave the labs running.
Right. Once the work was complete, the immortals needed to hide their tracks from Satan's faction, so they completely destroyed the environment around the pyramids to cover up the labs.
And that localized destruction is what created the modern Sahara Desert.
It's a sweeping narrative. It attempts to explain human diversity, ancient monuments, and massive geological changes all in one stroke. But you might be asking, what about the populations in the Middle East? What about Asia?
This is where the author's earlier critique of Genesis and the story of Cain comes back into play.
The Cain and Abel mystery makes perfect sense in this timeline. The author explains that while Jesus' faction was busy building humors in the pyramids over millions of years, another god entirely, a rival in the cosmic hierarchy, set up a competing project.
A totally separate lab.
Exactly. About 7,000 years ago, this other god built a secretive lab called the Garden of Eden in the Jerusalem area and created Adam and Eve.
And this perfectly solves the Cain dilemma we discussed earlier.
It completely explains why Cain was afraid of being killed by whoever found him in the wilderness. He wasn't alone. He was terrified of running into the millions of humans that Jesus' faction had already created and dispersed across the globe.
It is remarkably consistent within its own internal logic. But the explanation for East and Southeast Asian populations is even more radical within the text.
This is where the dinosaurs come back.
Right. Remember those two highly intelligent dinosaurs that hid in the East China Sea from God's plague? The text claims that roughly 7,500 years ago, they finally emerged from hibernation.
And they had a plan.
To avoid detection by the supreme god, they morphed into human form and began reproducing along the Yellow River. This, the author asserts, is the literal historical truth behind why East Asian cultures refer to themselves as the descendants of the dragon.
They are saying it's not a metaphor.
No, it is literal. They are a completely separate, distinct lineage from the humans manufactured in the pyramids or in Eden.
The scope of that claim is just wild. But the author doesn't just leave it as a biological quirk. They use these separate cosmic origins to explain the complexities of global sociology and the spread of religion.
This raises an important question within the text about historical religious adoption through a concept we could call spiritual DNA.
Spiritual DNA.
Yeah, the author tries to answer a historical puzzle. Why did Buddhism fail to take hold in its birthplace of India, but flourish incredibly when it moved to East and Southeast Asia?
It's a valid historical question.
The text argues that it's all about genetic memory.
Yeah.
The indigenous people of India were created by a different cosmic faction, so their spiritual DNA had no intrinsic resonance with Buddhist teachings.
But the East Asian populations, the descendants of the dragon, share a deep ingrained genetic memory with the Buddhas.
Exactly.
Because if we trace the timeline back, the Buddhas were the very angels of Satan who created the dinosaurs in the first place millions of years ago.
It all connects back.
It does. When these populations hear Buddhist or Taoist concepts, they aren't just learning a philosophy. Their spiritual DNA is literally vibrating, resonating with the cosmic beings who originally engineered them. It is a fascinating look at how the author uses cosmic sci-fi to explain real-world sociopolitical and religious divides.
They are biologicalizing cultural history. It frames religious affinity not as a cultural choice, but as a biological destiny hardwired by our distinct creators.
But managing all these different populations with different cosmic origins, running around with different spiritual DNA, was not a peaceful process.
Not at all. The text describes pre-flood humanity as a race of giants who were immensely powerful but completely out of control.
They were chaotic.
They were abusing the animals, ignoring the cosmic order, and even using their latent powers to travel to the higher dimensions and cause trouble in the celestial realms.
They possessed the power of their creators without the wisdom to use it. So, the Supreme God decides to hit the reset button. The text claims that 4,700 years ago, God literally tilted the Earth's axis.
A global cataclysm.
This triggered massive geological upheavals and 40 days of torrential rain. This cataclysm didn't just cause a localized flood. It drowned out entire advanced civilizations that had become too arrogant, specifically naming the Maya and Atlantis.
Importantly, because humanity was already spread out and had different origins, the text notes that the biblical Noah was not the only survivor.
Right, because there were different factions everywhere.
The author points to the historical accounts of Yu the Great controlling the floodwaters in ancient China. They even cite the oral traditions of the Mandan Native American tribe in North Dakota as proof.
So survivors on every continent.
The argument is that the flood was a global axis-shifting event, and pockets of these distinct human lineages survived all over the world to rebuild the diverse populations we see today.
So what does this all mean? We've covered an immense amount of ground today.
I really have.
Why should you, listening right now, care about this incredibly complex, deeply unorthodox alternative cosmology? I think it's because this text is a profound, almost breathtaking example of the human desire to synthesize.
Emphasis is the key word here.
We live in a world of totally fragmented information. You have genetics over here, ancient ruins over there, global mythology in one book, and quantum mechanics in another. This author looked at all those disparate pieces and tried to force them into one single, unified theory of everything.
It's an attempt to find order.
It's a massive attempt to make us feel deeply, tangibly connected to the very fabric of the cosmos.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the real value of exploring texts like this isn't about accepting their factual premises. It's about recognizing how the human mind constructs meaning out of chaos. By examining an ideological framework that is so vastly different from our own, we are forced to step back and question our own assumptions. It makes us look at the standard narratives we accept about our own origins and ask how much of our perceived reality is built on the stories we've simply agreed to tell each other.
It really makes you think about the invisible frameworks we all carry around every day. And that brings me to a final thought for you to ponder on your own. Something that builds on the author's universe but takes it a step further.
I'm intrigued.
The text insists that our ancient, separate physical origins completely dictate our spiritual affinities. Like the descendants of the dragon resonating exclusively with Buddhism because of their unique hardwired DNA.
Right, the biological destiny concept.
But think about the world we actually live in today. In our hyper-connected modern world where ideologies, cultures, and lineages mix on a global scale every single day, what happens to that spiritual DNA?
Oh, that is a great question.
If we are all carrying the genetic memories of different gods, black holes, and ancient angelic factions, what happens when they all blend together in modern cities and online spaces?
The cross-pollination of the cosmos.
Exactly. Are we currently evolving a brand new, unified global consciousness that transcends these ancient cosmic rivalries? Or, despite all our modern connections, are we forever bound by the invisible blueprints of our origin?
That is a lot to think about.
It's a fascinating question to leave you with. We want to warmly thank you for providing such an incredible, mind-bending text for us to explore today. This has been a truly unforgettable journey into an alternate universe. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.